Now on Art Attack, it's time for our regular feature, 2-Minute Histories. Today's subject, performance poetry.
Spoken poetry has its roots in pre-literate societies. In ancient Greece, epic poems like Homer's Odyssey were recited to music by a poet-singer. Their poetry spoke of subjects of love, war and peace, relationships with the gods and grief and loss. The advent of printing in the 15th century changed the role of the poet from entertainer to provider of written texts and transformed many listeners into solitary readers. The Beat movement was an American literary movement originating in the 1950s. Beat poets like Allen Ginsberg brought poetry back to the streets with spoken word performances. Open mic nights, introduced in the 1980s, allowed unknown poets to perform their own work on stage and led to the development of poetry slams, where competitors were given a time limit to present their work to a set of judges. Arising from urban unrest in the US in the 1970s and 80s, rap and hip-hop led to new ways for non-traditional poets to showcase their skills. Performance poetry is one of the most popular forms of poetry today. Contemporary performance poets are achieving new levels of prominence thanks to YouTube and other online media outlets.
I'd like to welcome to the studio Sarah Mills, who took a gap year to go travelling and share her thoughts and feelings on a blog so that friends, family and anyone else for that matter could follow the ups and downs of her exploits. Welcome to the studio, Sarah.
Thank you.
Tell me first, what initially prompted you to go globetrotting and record your thoughts on a blog?
Well, I'd always enjoyed travelling and found it a very emotional experience. But whereas traditional travel blogs and programmes seem to focus on what you see and do and not how it makes you feel, I decided to focus on the latter and use the blog as a means to share the full gamut of different feelings you can experience on the road. To be honest, I thought to myself, nobody'll read it whether I recommend sites or not. Which basically meant that I was free to express my true feelings as well as any doubts I had when I found myself in, let's say, somewhat difficult circumstances.
But the blog did become popular and eventually came in handy for another purpose.
That's right. I decided to try to raise some money via a crowdfunding site. You know, where I could appeal for funds to finance my venture. Unfortunately, I got very little response. A few travel companies told me that had I contacted them beforehand or had I agreed to wear a sponsor's shirt, they could have helped me out. But I was more than a little wary about turning my trip into a marketing campaign. The next thing you know, they'd be saying, well, we'll give you some money on condition that you visit this or that site, or as long as you take a picture here. So what I ended up doing was appealing directly through the blog and, somewhat to my surprise, I had gained quite a few readers and they were more than happy to help finance me and keen for me to continue expressing my feelings without compromise. But for their support, I wouldn't have been able to keep going.
And grateful we are to those contributors. Should you wish to follow the adventures of Sarah, she's going back on the road in a few weeks, and you can find her blog on www.sarah...
Dialogue 1.
The skateboard park is such a cool place. Why would anyone want to get rid of it?
Well, there are major redevelopment plans for this whole area, and to be honest, it does need to be cleaned up a bit. It's been around a long time. There's not much else for us skateboarders at the moment, so at least the developers are offering to create a new site under the bridge, even though it'll cost them a lot.
The park perhaps does look a bit old and a bit of modernising wouldn't hurt, but people have been skateboarding here for 40 years, so it's like a museum to the sport. A new park wouldn't be the same. The property developers claim they need to build shops and restaurants on it to bring in more money to the area and support local residents, though I'm not convinced. I went to this public consultation where they set out the nuts and bolts of the redevelopment and described the purpose-built skate park. They didn't accept any questions from skateboarders like us, and they made it seem like a done deal. Well, they'll soon find they've got a legal battle on their hands.
I bet you'll get a lot of backing from the whole skateboarding community.
Dialogue 2.
Have you seen the development plans on the town website?
Yes, and I won't miss the skateboarding park if they do get rid of it. There are all these important cultural institutions around here. Concert halls, theatres, and then there's that eyesore. I have no idea why people like rushing around on concrete bumps on a bit of wood with wheels. They're so noisy. It'll be great to be able to walk past here and have a normal conversation on the way back to the office without shouting.
What do you think will happen with the legal battle? It seems to be hotting up. There were lots of articles on both sides in the paper last week.
The skateboarders have a persuasive argument. Plus the park's pretty well known, and people come from other towns to use it. That means money for local businesses like ours. The overall look of the projected buildings is certainly appealing, though.
The developers' plans seem reasonable to me. OK, they're doing it for their own financial gain, but there are local benefits too. And the area isn't exactly pretty right now. It's not just greedy rich people against everyone. That's an oversimplification.
Let's see how it pans out. It's too close to call.
Dialogue 3.
So it looks like the decision was to keep the skateboarding park and not do the development. That was quick.
I could see it coming. The skateboarders generated lots of publicity. They used social media to whip up a real wave of support. They made a big thing about their own rights and what a historical place the skateboarding park was. But they didn't consider the benefits of the redevelopment for musicians like us who play in the concert halls, or anyone else for that matter. I guess they were too focused on their own feelings.
Most people didn't understand the complexity of the projects that were included in the plans. The new rehearsal studios that would have attracted new audiences for us, the pop-up shops that might have been run by young entrepreneurs. It could offer genuine local regeneration on all fronts, like a real creative hub. But that was downplayed by the people involved, which meant it became a real missed opportunity.
The studios would have been good for us and offered local kids a dedicated space where they could develop an interest in culture. The developers just didn't highlight that enough.
It's definitely a case of people not getting the message.
Have you decided what to vote for then? What do you think the school should invest the European grant money in?
Well, I haven't exactly decided, but I've already discounted the climbing wall because it's a sports facility and not a cultural one.
Oh, I didn't know it had to be something cultural. Anyway, I bet that'll still be the most popular choice among the students.
Maybe, but I'm not going down that road. Out of the other four, what do you think?
Well, I quite like the idea of the auditorium. One of the main pluses would be that it could be used for all kinds of things, and so a larger proportion of students would benefit, don't you think? We could do karaoke there, for example, and of course, more serious stuff as well.
Yes, but couldn't we just keep using the gym like we've always done? It's quite adequate.
True, I guess we could. You know, I see that as a drawback of the art studio as well. We already have a space in which we can paint and sculpt, and although it's hardly state-of-the-art, it still serves its purpose.
You're right. The art studio wouldn't really be anything new as such. I actually think there are points in favour of the cinema, you know. The nearest commercial cinema is miles away. Most of the time, I can't be bothered to go all that way.
But what kinds of films could the school afford to screen? They'd probably be really old and dated. I'd say that was a bit of a negative aspect.
Would it matter that they were old? It would be great education for us, I think. We don't always have to watch contemporary films.
I'm not so sure. Most people want to watch films on their computers these days anyway, instead of going to a cinema.
That could be an argument in favour of the updated computer lab then.
But there's a strong argument against that idea. Namely, students have access to computers at home. Plus, I think we have enough computers at school already.
Yes, but the computers here are quite old. I'm sure most students would really like an up-to-date computer lab with the latest computers and software. Access to the very latest technology is a strong selling point.
But don't you think we spend too much time looking at screens? I know you won't agree, but taking everybody's needs into account, I actually still think we should invest in the climbing wall.
You must be joking. That's not cultural. For me, bearing everything in mind, I'd say the computer lab is the best option because that can be cultural and you can use it for a lot of different things. For example, you could use it to watch or even edit movies. And it can also serve as a studio for digital design.
Well, I've made up my mind already. You vote for the computer lab if you want, but I'm going for the climbing wall and we'll have to agree to disagree.
OK. Vote for what you want. At least I'll have the satisfaction of proving you wrong.
We'll see about that.
Dialogue 1.
Ah, here it is. I've been wanting to see this painting in the flesh, so to speak, for ages. What do you think? Magnificent, huh? Mesmerising. It must have taken forever to paint.
Really? I'm not saying it's easy, and there's undeniably great talent needed to produce something like this, but surely once you have the general concept, a gifted artist would put it onto canvas in no time at all.
You think so? I'm not so sure. Look at the stroke of the brush, the balance and the perspective. It's captivating. A modern masterpiece and original in so many ways.
Well, be that as it may, it's hard to justify the price tag. Worth over $1 million, they say. Some think modern art has become so hyped up by the press and art critics that it's impossible to put any objective value on a piece nowadays. While I'm not of that opinion, and I can't deny that there is some outstanding work being produced, it still requires the discerning eye of the art buyers and gallery owners to recognize real greatness when they see it.
Dialogue 2.
I finally finished the book you lent me. Hardly what I'd call reading for pleasure.
I'd have to agree. A pretty unique plot, though, and despite the rather far-fetched characters and the cheesy dialogue, there's something about it to make you want to keep going.
Oh, the characters, the dialogues, the settings. And what about the way some sentences just finish in the middle? And the poems? Who does he think he is? Shakespeare? Joyce?
The most unbearable thing for me is the way it jumps about. There's no logic between one chapter and the next, so you have to go back and reread it at times, forcing you to reread those dreadful dialogues all over again.
Yeah, definitely a case of trying to be too clever. I mean, the actual language used was pretty straightforward, and it's not really that tricky to follow. But if you ask me, it just doesn't work. One thing's for sure, it won't be a modern classic like I think the novelist hopes it will be.
Dialogue 3.
That play I saw last night was frankly quite shocking.
That bad, was it?
I don't mean shocking bad. I mean shocking. I really didn't think something so controversial would be allowed on the stage. Not only was it violent and full of bad language, but some of the opinions the characters expressed were frankly disturbing.
Pretty powerful stuff, eh?
You can say that again. Don't get me wrong, I'm as much against censorship as you are, and those misguided people calling for it to be closed should see it for themselves before they go ranting and raving about it. It definitely does get you thinking, though.
I think all too often controversy for controversy's sake is a waste of time. I'll happily sit through it if you can genuinely recommend it, but if there's no discernible message and it's just designed to shock, you'll have a tough time convincing me it's worth the time or the effort.
Michael? Good to see you. It's been ages. How are you?
Hi, Janet. Great, thanks. And you?
Good, good. Are those beautiful flowers for me, by any chance?
Had I known I was going to bump into you for sure, I would have bought you some. They're actually for my mum. It's her birthday today. And you're the second person I've just explained myself to. I just bumped into Paul, who asked me if I was going on a date.
Well, lucky Mum. I love flowers, but Jack stopped buying me flowers ages ago.
Ah, you're still together then?
Yeah. 2 years now. Everything's good, I have to say. Except for the flowers.
Listen, I'm meeting my brother in half an hour at the cinema. He's there watching a film, and then we're going to go to my mum's for tea. You want to grab a quick coffee?
Sure, why not? Which cinema is it? I'm meeting Jack at the Orion at 5.
That's where and when I'm meeting my brother. Awesome. Let's grab a coffee at Mario's then. It's a 5-minute walk from the cinema. Then we can go there together for 5.
Super. It's a plan. Let's go. Oh, these silly shoes. I can't walk in these at all.
Here, take my arm.
Thanks. Oh, look, there's Robert.
Hi, Robert.
Hi, Robert. So, tell me, are you still into all that mystical mumbo-jumbo? Meditation, astral projection, hypnotism and whatnot?
Hey, easy. And yes, I am. Look deep into my eyes.
No chance. Here we are. Let's sit outside, okay?
Fine. Here we are, madam. Actually, I've been reading a bit about palm reading recently. Give me your hand and let me tell you your future.
Go on then. Here you are.
Ah, I see you will meet a tall, dark man in a dark, crowded place. It's crowded, but very quiet.
Yeah, that'll be Jack in the cinema. You're a fraud. Nice try, Mr. Guru.
Okay, you got me. But please don't tell anyone. It could ruin my reputation. Oh, here's the waitress. What are you having?
I'm not really sure.
The idea that you can become rich and famous by hosting a video blog on YouTube, Facebook, or other social media platforms was once thought to be a total fantasy. But the ever-increasing number of successful internet video stars has proved that online success is very real indeed. How do these self-made celebrities attract so many views? And how do they make so much money? Music videos are considered to be generating the biggest audiences on YouTube, Vimeo, and other streaming channels. Some big stars have become famous after posting self-produced music online. But the most popular music videos are produced by professionals in support of stars who already have millions of followers. Of course, these can be watched for free, but big money is made both through selling downloads of the music itself and through linked advertising. Self-made video bloggers are a more interesting phenomenon. These are people who make their own videos of themselves sharing, for example, makeup and fashion tips or gaming demonstrations. The number of vloggers is reported to have been growing rapidly. The ones that have an outstanding personality and a unique approach can become hugely popular and rich as well. It is widely known that some vloggers have made millions of dollars by allowing companies to advertise on their site, and also by selling products related to their subject. This kind of fame can even become a gateway to other forms of success, such as creating a product brand with your own name on it, or even guest starring on TV shows. Naturally, anything that attracts a lot of public interest is going to appeal to large companies. Some people reckon that vlogging is the new form of mass advertising. Companies make money indirectly by providing a free service which attracts new customers. Of course, the number of commercial video blogs produced by medical clinics, investment companies, and food producers have given vlogging a less personal face. But in the end, it's actually personality and a unique message that turn humble homemade videos into the road to wealth and fame.
On this episode of Media Today, I'm talking to Mark Adams, a newspaper journalist, and Paula Robertson, a university lecturer who runs a blog on citizen journalism, where ordinary people can post articles and reports. Mark, set the scene for us. How would you describe the responsibilities of a professional newspaper journalist?
I'd say we inform the public about events and issues and assess their potential impact. We comb through public records and seek out other sources of information, such as interviewing people or visiting locations where noteworthy incidents have taken place. The bottom line is we strive to present a truthful, well-balanced account of things that have happened. Clearly, we stay within the law and we're careful about things like the privacy of people we write about. And of course, it goes without saying that we're good writers.
So, Paula, in that case, what are citizen journalists and what do they do?
Well, let's clarify the terminology. When ordinary people post their own accounts of an event on a blog or specialized website like mine, it's known as citizen journalism. Nowadays, the prevalence of social media means that news gets out quickly and often people post or tweet things without checking the facts. And if their tweet goes viral, it may cause trouble if it's speculative rather than fact-based. But true citizen journalists may want to tell their side of a story and set up a discussion, or they may just have happened to witness something and want to share their experience. Of course, they're unpaid and their views are their own.
Mark, what's the print journalist's perspective on amateurs writing about the news in blogs?
On the one hand, I think it is a common misconception that just by posting online someone can become a journalist. From the opposing angle, though, bloggers and other citizen journalists can contribute helpfully by engaging people with issues that might otherwise get missed or ignored by the mainstream media, especially local issues or ones related to very specific topics. Of course, there is always the question of whether they're acting responsibly and are backed up by solid data. Nevertheless, citizen journalism is regarded positively by many because amateurs provide an ordinary person's view, and often a fresh angle. Regrettably, there isn't always total transparency in the mainstream media, and of course there can also be bias. Newspapers must make money, and that can influence what gets published.
I see. So, how would you describe the current situation in the media? Paula?
There are signs that the mainstream media is beginning to take citizen journalists more seriously. For example, recently there have been agreements between some newspapers and citizen journalists where the paper asks readers to contribute information and amateur footage for stories, and also to provide ideas for new coverage. One paper I know even provides tutorials for shooting video and so on to encourage more ordinary people to contribute. For the newspapers, it's clearly a move towards a better, more open form of journalism.
Well, that's debatable. Citizen journalists' lack of impartiality might actually be seen as a weakness, however brave it might be. Their reporting may show a biased attitude or be written from a certain ideological viewpoint. Professionals present issues objectively, or at least strive to. And don't forget that most citizen journalists have had no formal training in reporting or dealing with sensitive issues, so they can be unreliable.
Is there an example of a website you found particularly effective, Paula?
One that comes to mind is EbolaWatch.com. They reported on the Ebola outbreak from the perspective of people living in the most affected African countries. It was actually set up as a collaboration between medical experts and citizens reporting from the ground, and it quickly became the most reliable source of information about Ebola worldwide, challenging perceptions about the handling of the crisis in Africa and the commonly held notion that the Ebola crisis affected the whole continent rather than just a small corner of it. It was really this, plus the fact it was very well written, that made it so successful and influential.
How do you both see citizen journalism evolving in the next few years?
I predict a blurring of the divide between professionals and amateurs. People like me will certainly use more social media tools to get the public's opinion about a story or help with research. If the general public is involved in reporting news, that's good. Although maybe there should be some kind of remuneration for everyone. I wonder whether this will lead to an increased trust in the media among the general population.
I think it's likely that citizen journalists will help professionals in terms of getting information from inside a community. Journalists often find getting witnesses hard. Hopefully, however, this blurring of the lines between professionals and amateurs won't cause confusion. So the approach must be formalized if it's to be reliable, and the danger is that it undermines the strength of the citizen journalists' impartiality and independence. I'd hate to see that happen.
Thank you both. And thank you for listening. If you like Media Today, you might also like our sister podcast, Reshoots, which discusses all things movies.
There's no doubt that we all access an enormous amount of information online these days. But are we better informed as a result? Today on Town Square, we talked to several people to get their views of the subject. First, we spoke to Frank, a parent, who says his 2 teens are glued to social media and the internet. So, what's your take on this, Frank?
Well, like most people these days, when my kids want information, they quickly go to the internet to find it. They want the answer right away and they're impatient to get it. Well, fair enough, but the one thing that really bothers me about this is that they don't always check the source of the material. They tend to believe that if it's online, it must be true. It's clear that we need to teach people how to filter this information, to find out what's reliable. The key thing is that the entries on sites like Wikipedia are written collaboratively and they aren't always dependable. Sometimes it's just somebody's point of view, not objective fact, but many kids don't realise that.
Next, we asked a teenager, 18-year-old Laura, what she thought about that argument.
Well, I accept the point that a lot of our general knowledge comes from Wikipedia and that it can be subjective or inaccurate. But what about in the old days when we only received the news via newspapers or the TV? They used to make mistakes and manipulate the news as well. And it was harder to correct errors or bias in those days because everything took so long. To me, what's crucial today is that we make sure we receive news through a variety of channels. For instance, a lot of news coming through social media we associate with fun and leisure, and sometimes it's hard to take it seriously. Also, when somebody tweets a news story and that goes viral, how do you know it's to be trusted? If we can cross-check and find the same story on reliable news websites, in the newspapers, or on TV, then it's easier to be sure it's genuine. I guess the crux of the issue is that we can't rely on one source for all our information.
Next up, we spoke to John, a university student, to get his views.
When people ask me about the internet, I'm absolutely adamant in my view that it has been beneficial overall. I'm especially appreciative of how it lets us share information in exciting ways. Take, for example, crowdsourcing, in which many people contribute information to a story or project. There is a lot of expertise out there, and the internet makes it much easier for people to come together and exchange it. When I am working on an assignment, I can get help from students all over the world. Of course, I'm not convinced it is all unbiased or accurate, so I am always very careful who I speak to and how I use the information.
Finally, we spoke to Maria, who used to work in a social media company and now writes a blog about internet-related issues.
Well, I wonder if your listeners have considered how digitally mediated our information is and how quick we are to trust in all our computer programs. We need to be aware of the algorithms that filter our results so we only see what the program thinks we want to see. And don't overlook the fact that it's not only personalized advertising we get these days, but it also happens with news. Once we read one kind of story, our search engines and social media platforms start showing us similar stories and filtering out others. In some ways it's good because we get what we want, but the downside is that we don't get exposed to ideas that we might disagree with. And anyway, browsers and social media sites suggest products, adverts, information, everything. But do they always get it right? Do we really want these products? In many cases, absolutely not.
Thank you to everyone we spoke to. Next week, we will be talking about environmental issues and the
Hello to all of you out there and welcome to Tech Talk. Today we'll be talking about teenagers and technology with our guests Jenny and Charles. Thank you both for being available to talk to us today. Jenny, let's start with you. Can you give us some background about yourself?
Well, I'm a mother of 2 teenagers myself, so it's an issue which concerns me. We hear a lot about teenagers bent over their computers every day and doing nothing else, and this worries many parents who hark back to their own childhood of playing sports or running round the streets with their friends. In other words, they think of face-to-face rather than screen-to-screen communication.
It is a common concern, I think, that teens might be losing the desire to contact each other in the real world, so to speak, and are increasingly shutting themselves off from social interaction in which the physical presence of another person is relevant. But then again, I grew up with easy access to computers and social media, and I don't regard myself as especially prone to locking myself away in my room and communicating only through instant messaging or some other form of social media. I wonder if this isn't an exaggerated view encouraged by the media?
I see. Well, Jenny, do you see this as an example of media hype?
Not precisely. I see it more as issues raised which need serious investigation before we can come to any conclusions. Interestingly enough, I've just been reading a book by Dana Boyd, a digital anthropologist. She has spent the past decade analysing how teenagers use social media by watching the subtle cultural signals, rituals and group dynamics. And after conducting extensive research in 18 states across the US, she argues that some of the received wisdom about social media is wrong. Teenagers are not being harmed by social media, as adults often fear. Instead, they are developing adaptive skills for this new digital age.
Interesting. Charles, how do you feel about this?
Well, what she's saying is that though their behaviour is baffling to adults, teens are fine. I think my own experience supports that, though I realise it might be a hard message for many parents to swallow. The key point is that social behaviour is adaptive, and people in power, that is parents in this case, rarely understand the coping strategies being used by others.
Jenny, do you think this demonstrates a fundamental change in the way teenagers in our society are behaving?
Well, we're still human beings and our basic social impulses haven't changed. Boyd argues that teenagers have 2 basic impulses. They want to explore the world and they want to socialise with their friends. In previous generations, children could do this by wandering around their neighbourhoods or congregating in places such as shopping centres and parks. But these days, they often cannot, partly due to their parents' fears about danger and partly due to less free time generally. So instead, children rush to cyberspace. Adults have always been wary of teenager behaviour and have often regarded play as a waste of time. In much the same way, they are worried about their gathering in cyberspace. But actually, this is just symptomatic of a desire to socialise.
So, how do you see social media use evolving over the next few years?
I don't see any major change. Teenagers are leading the way here, and in my view, we'll soon see adults using social media in a similar way to teens. The only difference would be that most adults have jobs, and this necessarily limits the time they can spend on social media and the use they put social media to.
I'd go along with that, Charles. What we have now is just the tip of the iceberg. I'd like to see more of a balance, though. We should have the courage to give kids more freedom physically to roam in the real world, alongside their travels in cyberspace.
Thanks to both of you. Send us your comments on today's discussion at #.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kathy Thomas, and I'm here to tell you about my participation last year in an ongoing project monitoring wolves in a U.S. national park. The project involves volunteers, researchers, conservationists, environmentalists, and university students of subjects like anthropology, biology, or ecology, like me, all working together to monitor the numbers and behavior of the wolves. What attracted me was the impact of the work for the future of the environment in the park. Some volunteers describe the work as fascinating, others call it useful, but for me, it is vital, even though some people feel climate monitoring should be factored in too. First, I'll give you some background. Years ago, wolves living in the park were simply seen as predators, and a decision was made to eradicate them. I wish scientists had understood then how this would upset the natural balance of the area. What happened was that by removing the wolves, there was an increase in the numbers of elk, which then fed on young cottonwood trees growing near rivers, causing the trees to die. Before I started on the project, I'd also read a lot about how beavers depended on the roots and branches of the same cottonwood trees to build lodges. They also used the trees to build dams in the water, and I was staggered to discover that these actually irrigated the wetlands. Without these structures, the land quickly became drier. But lessons were learned, and in the mid-1990s, wolves were reintroduced into the park. As a result, the elk left the valleys and the trees flourished again. The beavers returned, encouraging new ecosystems. Predictably, these included fish, otters, and ducks in the rivers, and mice and rabbits on the land, which provided food for foxes. I hadn't expected there would be such a large variety of birds, though. So it's clear why the wolves need to be monitored, and that's where we volunteers come in. While research takes place in all weather, people might assume it's in summer that most work is done. But we were told it's easiest to study wolves in winter because that's when they move in daylight at lower elevations and also leave tracks, so that's when I went. We were all assigned a particular group of wolves to follow, and when we spotted them, we had to write down the time, the place, the number of individuals in the pack, including cubs, and their prey. It sounds easy, but the wolves were hard to find. Apart from that, and the patience we needed, I couldn't believe the freezing temperatures we had to cope with. Not everyone can be as lucky as I am and see wolves in the wild, but anyone can get involved by becoming a sponsor, which is really worthwhile. There's information on the park website, and there are different levels of involvement, depending on how much you want to give. The highest donation gets you special gifts, including an in-depth report on the project and stunning photographs. Even the smallest gift gets you a colorful poster and fascinating snapshots of the work. Why not get involved? I'm glad I did.
Olga, it's your turn first. Here are your pictures. They show people doing things in the natural world. I'd like you to compare the pictures and say what the relationship might be between the people and the landscape, and how the presence of people might affect the environment.
Well, they show very different activities and relationships. The first shows people skiing, so involved in a leisure activity, and therefore I assume that their relationship with the landscape is one of enjoyment and appreciation. I mean, they must be having fun skiing and snowboarding, but they are also almost certainly enjoying the fresh air and the beauty of the spot, too. We can't rule out the possibility that it's during a school break, or the weekend at least, as it looks pretty busy, and I can imagine that a lot of them are on holiday. Presumably, most of these people have traveled out here to spend a few days in the snow. I mean, I very much doubt that it's near where they usually live, and so they may have come out here by car or bus. In the second photo, the situation is completely different. Here, the people are working in the fields. They are almost part of the landscape. I assume that they must live here too, and that the landscape allows them to make a living. I can envisage that it's the main way of making money in that area. and their families may have been doing the same thing, living the same lives, for generations and generations. I don't really think they've had much impact on the environment, though I suppose that they would have to have built the terraces in the hillsides, which has had an effect on their surroundings. But I don't think it is as substantial as the effect we see in the photo of the ski resort. In that picture, the effect on the environment is much greater. All the machinery needed to run the ski lifts and all those people almost certainly got there by car, with all the pollution that comes with that.
Thank you, Olga. Pierre, in which situation do you think the people are most in harmony with their surroundings?
Well, you know, I agree with Olga. I think the ski resort definitely pollutes more. So I think people are more in harmony with the landscape in the photo with the terraces. I think they're actually rice fields, right? Here it looks like the people are making good use of their surroundings. They don't seem to be causing too much damage, though admittedly we can't rule out the possibility that they're using pesticides or fertilizers. This could cause problems. But I guess they are using them to make a living, and they've left a lot of the surrounding forests intact. Yes, definitely this one.
Good afternoon. Firstly, I'd like to thank you all for coming. The aim of today's talk is to update you on the current situation regarding renewable energy use and to convince you that there's a real possibility of becoming 100% dependent on renewable sources of energy within our lifetimes. It is possible. For example, did you know that Costa Rica introduced petrol-electric hybrid cars in 2004, the fully electric car in 2009, and has already achieved between 95 and 99% carbon neutrality with a target to be completely carbon-free by 2021? How have they done this? Well, let's look at the types of energy they've been converting to and some facts and figures to show how much progress we are making worldwide in terms of creating a cleaner, greener planet. Let's begin by looking at hydroelectric power. Now, we all know that the planet is covered in water. And unlike other sources of energy, this source is constantly available. Not only is fast-running water able to generate lots of power by driving turbines, but via the use of purpose-built dams, power output can be regulated to meet demand. And thanks to constant evaporation and precipitation, it really is the ultimate renewable source. It currently constitutes 16% of global electricity produced and is forecast to rise by a further 3.1% each year. Solar power is also growing in popularity, with more and more countries offering subsidies to incentivise both companies and the general public to invest in solar panels. We can harness this natural source not only to create electricity, but it can also be captured efficiently to heat water and our homes. Unlike hydropower, however, this source is not constant and is heavily reliant on such factors as location, time of day and weather conditions. Transference of power can be costly, but it offers huge benefits such as increasing a country's energy security through a reliance on an inexhaustible and import-independent resource. Geothermal energy is provided by harvesting the heat of the Earth's core. Said to be over 6,000 degrees Celsius, which is actually hotter than the surface of the sun, it is estimated that it can produce 50,000 times more power than fossil fuels can provide. Clearly something we can expect to be utilised more in the future. In fact, since 2005, there has been a 20% increase in global geothermal energy production, accounting for a total of 27% and 30% of all energy produced in the Philippines and Iceland respectively. Finally, let us consider wind energy. Already we can see wind turbines gracefully capturing the breeze and being turned into clean electricity by powerful generators. These can be situated in almost any location, anywhere in the world, with both on-land and offshore turbines already generating over 60 times more gigawatts of energy than just 10 years ago. It is also the added benefit of boosting rural growth as power plants and transmission lines are created to bring the energy into more populated areas. At present, as much as 40% of Denmark's energy comes from wind power, and it now accounts for 4% of worldwide energy usage.